Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for this special webinar brought to you in partnership with the Open University Business School and the Campaign for Learning. My name is Julia Wright. I'm the National Director at the Campaign for Learning. I'm delighted to be hosting today's session and equally delighted to be joined by Penny Asher, who is the Director of Executive Education at the Open University Business School. So over the next 30 minutes, we want to share with you some of the perspectives and thoughts on the challenges of global L&D, and we hope you find this interesting and thought-provoking. The webinar is being hosted in the run-up to Learning at Work Week, which takes place in May and is coordinated by us at Campaign for Learning. It's an annual opportunity to celebrate and promote the benefits of workplace learning. All sorts of organisations will be running activities during the week, including the Open University Business School. So I hope you'll be able to join us for the week as well and do something during the week. Over the next 30 minutes, you'll be able to interact with us in a number of ways. You'll see on your screen a chat panel, and we invite you to share your questions there. We'll try and answer as many of these as we can over the course of the webinar. You'll also have the chance to participate in our polls, and we'll be handing over to our technical manager, Olivia, to launch those during the course of the next 30 minutes. So just a reminder that this webinar will be recorded and available online after the session. So if you have any colleagues who would have liked to join us today but weren't able to, you can share this with them afterwards. Okay, that's enough for me. Over to Penny now to talk about the challenges of global L&D.
Thanks very much, Julia, and thanks to all of you for your interest in the challenges of global L&D in this webinar. I just want to just tell you at this stage that throughout this webinar I will refer to a survey that the Open University Business School has recently published. This was based on interviews with 200 senior HR and L&D decision makers in international organizations. So very much focused at international organizations as part of that survey. Our aim was really to see how globalization and the integration of functions across organizations and how organizations are responding to those changes in context has impacted learning, and whether the response from L&D has met those needs, whether we are actually responding in the right ways, and what we're actually doing with supporting the learning changes and the landscape that's going on within the organizations at the moment. I would say, though, although it's focused at international organizations, I really do think that the findings and a lot of the challenges and the barriers that we're going to talk about and some of the next steps are very relevant to any organization, particularly those with distributed populations, but as we go through it, to any organization with L&D professionals involved. And so I hope you all find it interesting. I would just also say that global and international, those words are used interchangeably. I know that you can define them slightly differently, but for both the survey and for this webinar, we're using those interchangeably. So over this webinar, I'm going to take you through some of the findings from this survey. So what is actually happening out there in terms of the learning landscape, and what are we doing in response from L&D? What are some of the barriers to actually delivering against some of those expectations? And what is our response, and what should we be doing next? So in terms of the challenges of global L&D, we know that the environment and the context that we're operating is changing. We've all been used to the VUCA world and that acronym for some time about volatility and uncertainty. And so our businesses and organizations are changing, as are employees, And so our organizations, a lot of them are demanding things like talent and workforce mobility, the consistency in approach and capabilities from L&D, which would perhaps support that or go some way to support that. The sharing of knowledge and information and expertise that we have across organizations is really something that more and more are demanding. Learning for all, I think we've all sort of over the past, our experiences in L&D had to focus our investment and our efforts on specific segments of the employee population, whether it be the high potentials, our talent, our senior management, Irrespective of location, though, we're now being asked to address the whole of our employee population. We, as with the context that we're operating in, need to be more agile and really respond to the changing needs at the speed at which they are doing so. And at the same time, we have to be more efficient and to try and reduce investment in L&D while trying to enhance the impact that you get from L&D. And that's an obvious tension, and it's really about creating the value rather than necessarily measuring the investment and the impact. So if we look at some of the surveys, some of the survey results within that context, 58% of people we talked to expected a performance uplift by sharing learning more effectively. That's a large percentage. Performance is now clearly linked to what we as L&D are doing and how we are actually sharing learning across our organizations. 56% believe increasing international collaboration will generate significant commercial impact. So we can really impact the bottom line. 44% of people admitted they were already losing talented employees because they weren't constantly being developed. About looking at our employee populations more holistically is becoming much more important. 62% see global learning programs as the future, and 94% will increase investment in international learning. So what do we mean by that? You know, what are we going to do to address this need for international learning and what we perceive to be as, you know, the demand for that and what we need to do?
Okay.
We're now going to just go to a quick poll.
Okay, thanks, Penny. Please, could we launch the poll, Olivia? So the first poll is asking, do you expect to develop or deliver global learning programs in the next year? If you could answer yes, A, mostly online, B, yes, mostly face-to-face, C, yes, online and face-to-face, or D, no. So the question again is, do you expect to develop or deliver global learning programs in the next year? A, yes, mostly online. B, yes, mostly face-to-face. C, yes, online and face-to-face. Or D, no. So if you could respond to the poll now, that would be great. I'm going to have a look and see if there's any questions come through for you, Penny.
Thanks.
I can't see any at the moment. Sorry.
Okay. I would just comment that we saw, as you saw in the survey findings, a lot of people wanting and looking to develop global learning programs, and so it's just of interest to see whether we on the line today are thinking the same thing and are looking to do this going forward. So that's really the reason for the poll.
Okay. Thank you. Penny, talking about sharing learning across organisations, have you? Are there any trends in how people are doing this, or activities? Have you found companies developing new approaches, or are they using kind of traditional approaches, but trying to reach different people?
I think there's a combination of things. I'm going to go on to discuss at the end of, sort of towards the end of this webinar, what some of the things that I think that we should be doing and what we've seen doing. I mean, some of that's related to technology and different learning management systems, but it doesn't have to be technology. And global learning programs, can be developed and delivered in a number of different ways. But I will address it further at the end of this.
Great. We do have a question that's come in. Claire has asked, you mentioned that people are leaving due to not being constantly developed. It is unlikely people are leaving just for this reason. How do we make sure we are connecting numerous things, such as providing learning and development with reward implications?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because just recently I was reading about Gen Z or Z. The most important for them is reward, not is learning. Whereas if you look perhaps at Gen Y, they view learning perhaps a little bit more importantly than them. And of course, we've got our existing population. So it's very interesting what it is that we need to combine. And I'm not suggesting that learning on tap is going to keep people, but it is one of those things that is becoming increasingly important as a retention tool. But it isn't the only thing, and I do accept that.
Okay, thanks, Penny. We do have the poll results in, so Olivia, if you could publish those now. So the answers that you gave were yes, mostly online. We had 21.8% of people say online would be, that's how they would approach it. Mostly face-to-face was just under 11%. Online and face-to-face, 45 to 46%, and no, 22%. So let's have a look. So yes, a big percentage of people. I think if I add those up, 45, 55, over 70% of people are expecting to be developing or delivering global learning programs in the next year.
Okay, so that ties in nicely with the survey results, which is great. Thank you.
Right, okay. So Penny, over to you.
Yeah. So many of us, I know, we've just confirmed that we're all thinking about global learning and global programs. I suppose what we really need to think about is what is making it so difficult to deliver. Is it because we're not putting enough attention to it? Is it because we've not recognized we need to do it, or we don't know how to do it? So I just wanted to go back to the survey and talk about some of the barriers. 41% worry the organisation is too complex. And I wonder about that. What does that mean? Does it mean the organisation structure is just too complex so that we have really diverse employee populations with multiple needs and great diversity, and we can't meet that? Is it the politics that might surround some of that structure and how we interact? What do we actually mean there? So that's an interesting thing. 42% were concerned learning is not valued at the top. I thought we had passed through that era of leaders not really understanding the value of learning. And moved on, and perhaps it's more about not that they don't value the learning, but still don't actually understand the level of investment required to deliver the right type of learning, and the value that generates for an organisation. So maybe that message hasn't got through yet. 43% face local resistance. I've certainly been working with clients and other organisations, and in an organisation myself, where let's just take a system. People have been locally very protective of their systems. It's really hard to understand something that we've created locally, and there's a great corporate centre coming along to replace it and become more global. And we still seem to face local resistance because apparently we're not really engaging people enough across our organisation to really engage and buy into what we're trying to do. 46% of us suggest that we don't have the capabilities to develop global learning, and that's really interesting. Have we as L&D come to terms with our role, a change in our role? Do we know really what we need to do to deliver global learning and what those capabilities are? And then 48% say we don't have or make the most of that technology. Technology is one thing, it is a great enabler. And that links also to the capabilities we just talked about. Do we have the capabilities to understand how to make the best use of that technology? So we're now going to quickly go on to poll 2.
Okay, so Olivia, if you could publish poll 2, please. We launched poll 2, I should say. So the second poll, we're asking what percentage of L&D in your organisation is now delivered online or electronically? Is it A, less than 25%? Is it B, 25 to 50%? Is it C, 50 to 75%? Or is it D, more than 75%? So what percentage of L&D in your organisation is now delivered online or electronically? Is it A, less than 25%, B, 25 to 50%, C, 50 to 75%, or D, more than 75%? So if you could answer those now. And if you have any questions, please do post them on perhaps Penny's last slide about barriers. And if you are experiencing similar things, do you think your organisation is too complex? Or are you concerned that learning isn't valued at the top? What's the experiences in your organisation, and how perhaps have you addressed this?
I talked about technology being an enabler and an important thing, and so this is another reason that this comes up in poll 2, because technology, having it doesn't necessarily mean that you're delivering L&D in a good way or the best, most efficient way. It can just mean a e-catalogue of training, which isn't quite what we need to be doing. But I think this is just interesting to see what the trend is, because our survey found out, or the findings of that suggested that we were close to 50-50 in terms of face-to-face and online. So it would be interesting to see where we are on this poll.
Okay, thanks, Penny. Ruth has just made an important point that even if technology is available, there may be no connectivity in some parts of the world. So that can be a barrier as well.
Yes, absolutely. It could be a barrier. There are ways to address some of that and to still engage people. So technology is not the only answer. That's perfectly correct. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Right. So I think the poll results are ready. So Olivia, please do publish those. And the answers you gave were that less than 25% of L&D in your organisation is being delivered online electronically. So 46.7. So 47% of you said less than 25% is being delivered online electronically. Between 25 and 50%, that was a third of you said 25 to 50%. So answer B. Now 50 to 75%, answer C. Only 7%, and answer D, more than 75%, that was 13%. So, Penny, does that reflect your survey?
We found about 50-50 in terms of face-to-face and online. So, I'm just... yeah, I mean,
that probably
it's not
just cut
contrary to it. It's in the same sort of region. I can understand them, and it's a great way of validating our findings. So,
yeah. So somebody's just made the point. Mahesh has just made the point that behavioural training, stuff like behavioural training, there'll be constraints about this being delivered online. So, there will always be some types of development that will need face-to-face or other approaches.
I think over time, some of behavioural training, I agree, some of behavioural training we can do more and more online using new digital tools and different virtual reality or augmented reality in the future. Those are all a little bit far away, depending on, as we know, a lot of this costs a lot at the moment. But as that cost comes down, those sorts of things we may be able to use. But face-to-face does still have a place, definitely. Yep,
okay. We've just had a comment through. Terry says, my last employer became global very quickly due to successive acquisitions. They've quickly moved into more technology-based learning, but there is evidence that the learners don't value this as much as face-to-face learning. So is that something that you've come across, Penny, as well, that it's about the value that can become a barrier in itself?
I do think online still suffers from both perception but reality as well, in terms of not delivering the impact that I think we all expected it would do when we started off on the online journey. I think things are starting to change, and there are ways, again, and techniques to enhance learning from online. And if you talk about supported online, the sort of model that OU and some other providers do, that is actually, starting with learning advisors and other people to really reflect and learn in a different way, but using online resources as well. So it's quite a relevant point. Thank you.
Okay. And just one last point. Alan has said technology issues may be easier to address than long-term poor management and deficient leadership at both operational and especially senior level. So that might be not an easy win, but something that can be looked at.
Yeah. Again, that sort of talks about segmenting different parts of the employee population and what's more valued for some rather than others. And that's still a very relevant argument for us.
Yeah. Okay. And we've had lots of comments about people saying that their colleagues, people in the workplace, there does seem to be a big preference for face-to-face, and people will choose face-to-face sessions as a preference for one of the commenters. Okay, thank you. I think we should move on to your next slide, Penny.
Yeah. It should come up any moment, hopefully. Yeah. So I just wanted to finish on sort of what's next. If we go back to some of the survey findings, I mentioned earlier that 94% are planning to increase investment in international learning programs, and people on this webinar are also looking at developing global learning programs. 52% believe in-depth global learning programs attract talent from across the world. 58% want to focus on creating global learning programs to create the sort of consistency that is perceived to be needed in terms of capabilities across organizations. And nearly 50% said that their learning architecture was decades out of date. So it's easy to see that we do have a challenge for us as global L&D professionals, or L&D professionals generally. And I think it's wider than just talking about global. This is a challenge that we face in any organization. We just focused originally on the global part. L&D can deliver value to people. It can create performance and drive performance for organizations, and it can really hit the bottom line in terms of delivering profit. And it's very easy here to say what we should be doing, but it's not actually easy out in actually trying to make it happen. For me, I really like to think about what we need to do as a learning ecosystem. So self-sustaining. So we are connecting experts, we're identifying them, we're creating networks, we're supporting user-generated content where that's relevant. We've engaged and enabled those sorts of conversations to happen. We have, our core global learning skills and capabilities identified. We understand what those are, and we have our way to do that. And we're engaging the businesses, the leaders of our businesses, to address that, the value of L&D. We have to do more to sell that, the value of L&D to many of our senior leaders. And so it's engaging the businesses and L&D globally. It's about thinking about, I think, our role in L&D and what that should look like in terms of collaborating and engaging everyone wherever they may be in that whole process. Technology, we said, is an enabler. Some cases it's not as important as others. Some parts of the world it can't be implemented in exactly the way that we might want it to be. But, if you talk about social learning management systems or other methods of engaging people and communicating with people, technology can be that enabler. And all of that really is part of supporting, but also creating a learning culture. Again, it doesn't need to be through technology. It can be as we would normally have done it in our face-to-face world, and just connecting people and communicating using our good old smartphones and phones. But it is really something about creating a learning culture in organizations so that we can recognize the value and really engage everyone in it. And the employee population we look at more holistically, and we can create that environment where people can access learning when they want and how they need to be accessing that learning. That's it from me, Julia. So that's the end of my slides.
Okay, thanks, Penny. I'm just looking at some of the comments and questions that have come in. Gabby has said we need to consider that learning does not most effectively happen in a training environment, whether it's online or face-to-face. So talking obviously about thinking about how learning can be made, much more effective. Obviously, that needs to be a consideration. Martin says one of the problems he's faced is providing quantitative evidence of ROI from L&D, and asked about the kinds of resources or journals that might provide that.
ROI, I think, continues to be an issue for all of us. I've never really seen ROI measured very effectively, and I think we all struggle to do it. When I was in an organization, customized executive education organization, and people asked about ROI, that was one thing. But when we wanted to measure it and to charge people for it, the question went away. And I think ROI, this is my perspective, is that we are moving much towards an environment and a time when we know we have to do learning, we know we have to develop all our people. It's almost a given, and yes, we still have to demonstrate the value that is bringing to the organization, but that's much more a question for the business, and we see it in the bottom line. I do think that we get diverted by our leaders asking for ROI, and to me, we are going to really struggle to measure it in a tangible way, I suppose, that really some leaders might still be expecting. So that's my perspective.
Okay, so Martin, it might be looking at other ways of approaching that isn't an ROI and trying to make the argument away from that to prove value. Alan has said learning is, of course, not the sole responsibility of managers. It's about individuals as well, understanding the value and seeking benefit from learning. People are different, so they're not easy issues for people in L&D and teachers and supervisors to perhaps address individual motivation.
Yeah, that was part of what I was trying to get at with my view on learning ecosystem, that it's engaging everybody within the employee population and trying to infuse them and create that learning culture. There are always going to be some people that are not interested in learning, and there are always going to be some people who are much more interested than others. And there are people in the middle. And I think, there are lots of ways that we can, L&D, either through technology or through just different innovative ideas, and some of it we saw last year in the Campaign for Learning at Work Week. There's some great ideas out there about how to infuse people to learn and really engage them in enthusiasm and passion for learning. So I agree it's different and individuals are different.
Okay, thanks, Penny, and thanks for the Learning at Work Week reference there. We do find that there's some brilliant ideas that come out of Learning at Work Week, and people test that, kind of how to motivate colleagues to get involved in learning, and the idea that different things turn people on. So yes, absolutely, there's some really good ideas out there. And if you are interested, the Learning at Work Week website has interviews with a lot of the companies that take part and talk about what they've done during that week. And a lot of the time it is bringing together the domains of learning and development with marketing and communications, and thinking very much from that perspective holistically. Okay, I think we need to actually close up now. So thank you very much, Penny, for your presentation. Do you have any final thoughts before we close?
No, I just think it's been great to actually just get some of the questions and the comments, but also to validate some of the findings. We're talking about global learning being an issue for us and a challenge for us, and it's borne out by some of the responses that we've had. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Penny. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Do look out for the free lunchtime webinar during Learning at Work Week. It's going to be on the Creative Learner, and you'll be able to cascade that internally to all your people to sign up for. Registration links are going to be available soon on the Open University Business Schools website and learningatworkweek.com, so do look out for those links. I think just the final slide now, Penny, if that's okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so again, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in finding out more about the Open University Business Schools courses and executive education, please do use the link. As I said before, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to get a link to the recording and obviously share that with colleagues as well. So it leaves me to say thank you to you, thank you to Penny for today's presentation, thank you for all your questions, and I hope you join us soon for another webinar.